defining integer and string, right? Normally. Uh,
Yeah,
are there uh, any other things which we can use?
we can put give anything. We are
Anything?
creating custom classes, right? For our unscrambler game, etc.
Right.
Okay, even we can create those classes. We can give anything. That the classes are designed in such a way that they'll work for anything. However, so some things we may have to create some extra methods to actually say, for example, there is set. Okay, if we are trying to add, say, for example, 5 and 5, it knows that okay, both are same. It knows how to check them, and it will be able to decide if that element is already there in that hash set. Okay, imagine, say, we are adding a custom class. So for example, the class that we created, can you give me any name of a class you created?
Just a minute. Let me see. Collections.
Okay, let's say that is a class, and we created an object for that. Okay, so imagine we are trying to add two objects of that same class in that hash set. How does hash set know that those two are already equal? Okay, so for this, it tries to use some default mechanism. Let's say, for example, uh, let's think about our game class. Say there is a class called user we are trying to add. Okay, say when we are trying to add that same user to multiple times, same object to the multiple same object in multiple times to the hash set, it may not give any problem. Imagine we are trying to create two objects for some reason, whatever reason it may be, for the same user, and we are trying to add it in that uh, collection, sorry, in that hash set. Now, how exactly can hash set determine if the user that you are trying to add is something that is already there in the hash set? So can anyone give, say for example, forget about your username, hash set, and all. Imagine you have a generic problem of adding two objects into a class, say two users into a hash set. Forget even about hash set. How do you determine if those two are same or not?
Same in the sense, same type of belong to same type of class.
No, no. They you see, user class is created to represent a real world player who is playing the game, right?
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, say there are two objects representing the same player, say you.
Okay.
Okay, so how do you determine, forget about Java coding and all, say with common sense, how do you determine if that class belongs to the class represents the same object or the same person, to say it in real world terms?
So it should have same properties and methods and all fields.
No, methods and properties are same because they are originated from the same class.
Right.
So how to tell if a person object that I'm trying to add is of same person? The two objects of person class are of same person. How to tell that?
You should have same characteristics.
Yes, in other words, if the both the persons have same names, imagine that is one criteria. Okay, that may not be the only thing. For our simplistic scenario, let's assume if usernames cannot be duplicated. Okay, so in our simplistic scenario of that, what we will actually get is what we have is the person's name should be equal is the criteria that we have defined, right? So this is a custom definition of a some equality scenario. Okay, how do we tell if two persons are person objects are same? We are defining that as a if both the names are equal, we consider those two classes also, those two objects also equal. So imagine that is a custom criteria that we have set. Okay, so it's not hard coded, or it's not something that is uh, uh, that should be followed must and should. Okay, so it's not like that. But that can be one condition. So how can we actually set that kind of conditions when we are adding in hash set? Let me just demonstrate you something before I actually go to today's topic of dependencies, etc. Uh, I'll keep open. So there is a user class. Okay, and now okay, let me create this in some other class so that you will be go best of it. We don't need the communicator. Okay, now so let's say we have this communicator class, and now let's create an ampersand test. Let's ignore this. Right. Now let's say I created an object user uh, u1 equals to new user of say Buddha. Okay, and I created another user u2 equals to new user of say Buddha. Okay, now I created hash set, and this can actually take user type of objects, and list equals to new hash set. Okay, now first let me explain you one other thing. Now let's say I want to print out this u1 object. What happens here when we call like this? U1 actually when this is out actually is expecting an object, right? Whenever it gets an object, it tries to call a method called as toString, okay, which will be there in java.object class, java.lang.object class. Okay, so it will have some by default implementation. Now if we say, for example, if we run the program, what happens is we get something like this. What we got over here is we got the address where that particular object is stored. Now if we say, if we print u2 also, now if you see, these two are two different objects which are stored in two different address locations. Okay, and though both are representing the same person in the real world, they are actually stored in two different places. So if we say if u1 dot equals u2, it is going to be returning a false. it will be returning you false. So these two are not defined as equal objects. So now if we try to add the same objects in here, add u1, u2, now if we print this list, we should be seeing two users in the output. Okay, now we saw these two, but this is not that good, right? So for example, seeing this address, we don't know what user this is. So now we know both are same, but imagine these two are two different users. This is not that readable. So in that case, what we can actually do is, as I said, whenever we are actually calling this println method, it is actually calling a method called as toString, which is coming from object. Now, can any one of you guess what we can do to make this more readable? Instead of printing, say for example, address where it is stored, how can we print Buddha instead of the username, instead of printing the address? Can anyone guess?
Value in that address.
I'm sorry, what is that? Oh, no,
Uh,
no, I understand. What you meant is u1 dot get name or something is what you are telling. Okay. What if I don't want to call this get name every time? Whenever I'm trying to print, whenever I try to convert this to a toString, a string object, it should actually have only this. How can I do that? In fact, it's a concept that I already explained you. Any guesses?
which concept, Buddha? Can you give some clue?
Uh, in fact, this is a previous session only.
Uh, Object element.
Oh, no. Uh, See, if you remember, I said something called as inheritance, and which we can do something called as override, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we can actually do is, as I said, the toString method is actually defined in the object class. And I also told every class is inherently extending from object class. That way, we can override the toString method of the object class also in the inside the user. So how I can do that? We can say at override. And
What is that, Buddha? To stream.
I'm sorry,
You're telling some word to stream, print stream.
toString. Say for example, how does system dot say for example, now, how does this println know how to print this u1? U1. What it actually, the println is to display it on the computer, it has to convert everything to string, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so what it actually does is it inherently calls a method called as toString.
Okay, got you.
Okay, so if I run this program, it ultimately prints the same thing. In fact, it does the same thing. Okay, so what we are actually doing over here is what this println does is it calls the toString method of this u1 object. Now, if we define a different, give a different definition to this toString in this user class, public a toString is returning a string. Now, instead of by default, the toString method of the your object class is returning the type of the class at and the address. So that is why we are getting type of the class, which is user, and then we are getting at this particular address. So user at this address is what by the default object class is given. So now What do we have to do? Let's say we just want to print the return the string or username. So we can simply return the name, and that's it. Now if we run the same program, now let's see what happens. Now do you see we got Buddha, 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 Buddha. Now, so what we have done over here is we have overridden the behavior, the default behavior of, say for example, the object class. Now, how can we call the the parent class objects? We can call super this dot, sorry, super dot toString. Now, let us try to debug what is coming back from that. Let's put a breakpoint and let's debug this. Now I'm here. Now what did I get here? I got user at 39414E1A04. Okay, A04. Now let's see one more thing. There is something called as drop to frame in debugging. Okay, when we say drop to frame, it actually goes to the beginning of that method. Okay, so goes to the first line of that method. Okay, so sometimes it will be useful for us to actually perform some, like repeat some things that are already over. Of course it's not we can't do everything. So for example, we want to go to the first method or first line of the duplicates method in the stack trace, so we can click this here, and then if we click the if we try to click the drop to frame, we cannot, because it's we have already dropped one, so we cannot drop again. So let's instead of step over, let's step into. Now if you see, we have got into a class object class dot toString method, line number 236. So here they have actually written in such a way that get class dot get name at integer dot toHex string hash code. So they are actually generating a hash code which is being used in the toString method. Okay, so how this hash code is working, we can go there actually to see. This may be defined in some other class. So that is how by default super the object class toString is working. Now because we didn't want user class behave the object class behavior, we are simply returning the name. So have you guys understood this concept of overriding? How we can override the behavior of object classes to actually get a clean output of those objects?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. So now,
And
yeah,
one
yes, Remas.
so when you equal the U1 and U2,
Yes.
uh, it's still giving
Yes, that is still giving because we have not overridden the equals method.
equal.
Equals method. So equals method is actually coming from a class called object. Same class,
Okay.
java.lang.object. So if we want a different behavior, even for this equality comparison, we have to override this equals method. Okay, and as I said, hashset also uses a mechanism called as hashcode. It generates something called as hashcode, and it uses it. So when we are actually in fact, not only hashset, there are many classes which actually use hashset for that purpose. Okay, so what we are supposed to do is we can actually we have to actually override two methods, not just a single method. Okay, one is hash code and another one is the equals method. Okay, for this particular operation to work properly. Now how can we do that? We can again write the same methods, but there is a shortcut way of getting that thing done in Eclipse. Okay, right click over here, go to source and override and implement methods. So when we select this, and also there is an option they are giving directly, generate hash code and equals. Now let's say what are all the parameters that should be considered in the generate hash code and equals, it is asking. If we don't really want points at this point of time, let's assume name is the only thing. So now we unselect these two class variables and say okay, this automatically generates two hash code methods for us. Okay, so hash code is nothing, it's just a conversion of that a particular object into some integer representation. So here we are actually seeing that name dot hash code. Again, this is using the hash code of the string of string class. Okay, so which will be same as long as the data is same. So we don't have to worry about changing this. And the equals, what it is telling, if this is equals to object address are same, it is returning true. If one is null, it is returning false. If both of them are of not type, there it is returning false. Also, then what it is doing, it is using equals object on the name, which is the string. Okay, so we actually have to use equals ignore case. So let's say same case also is not sufficient. So what we did is we simply have written our own behavior of equals and the hash code. So now when we run this program, say both are considered equal now, and even in the list only the Buddha is added once. Even if I add it with a lowercase, it will be considered two different things. Why? Because let us see why. Their hash codes. So the hash code of capital letter Buddha, capital BUDDHA, and hash code of small BUDDHA will be different. Okay. So as I said, the hash set actually uses the hash code generated out of those things. So we should be actually converting these also to lowercase or some one single case before we do that. So how can we do that to lowercase? So when we do to lowercase every object, what happens is everything will be converted into lowercase first, and then will be and then the hash code will be generated for that. So now let's run the program. So now only one Buddha is added to the list. Okay. So now if I add another user, imagine our requirement is even if there are spaces, we should consider them equal. Let's say let's put that imaginary requirement. Yeah. Even if there are spaces, they should be considered same. So how can we do that one? Any guesses? Srinivas or Kishore?
We should ignore spaces, Buddha.
Yeah, how can we do that? Okay. See, in the hash in this hash code method, so here what we are doing, first we are converting into lower case, right? In the same way, a string also has another method, replace. Okay, in which we can actually give a space and we can tell it to ignore or remove some characters and place instead of them place another character. So the replace method will work on any string. So now here what we will be doing is we are replacing every space with an empty character. Like we are simply we are removing this space. So what happens is when we run this program, okay, even though hash code is giving the same thing, equals is giving us a different thing. So now what we have to do is we have to replace. Now even in the equals method also we have to do similar kind of things. So now what happens is when we run this collections program again, now if you see even the spaces are also considered the like spaces are also ignored. So this is how we can actually override use any class that we want in hash sets, etc. Okay, leaving it to the default will work okay, but in some cases you will have to write your own hash set or write your own hash code and equals methods in order for you to give a more refined behavior of how they operate, how they work. Okay, so now uh, so if you don't have any questions on this, we will go to the topic that I wanted to cover in this session.
Buddha, one thing. I mean, if we create two objects with value Buddha,
Mhm.
uh, those are not equal. Those are treated as different.
By default, the default behavior is to treat them as different objects only. Okay, here
I
we
mean,
wanted a custom behavior, right? Okay, we don't want them to be equalized just based on addresses where they are created. We want them to be equalized based on only on their names. So for that, what we did, we have changed their equality behavior. Okay,
okay.
so
No, no, I got this one. We are changing the hash code based on our customization.
yeah.
Suppose if we are not using this hash code at all, what is the default one? What we are comparing?
Okay, so for that, for you to understand that, let's see. Uh, let's say there is no this hash code is not there. Okay, let's imagine that case. And
Mhm.
now in the ampersand test public void hash code. Now let's create a new user object.
Okay.
Now let's call sysout user dot hash code. Okay, so now here I'm trying to access the. Okay, I should not have same name because hashcode already has some method. It should only return an integer, so I'm returning changing this method name to hashcode test. So because otherwise this is considering this as I'm overriding the hashcode in this collections test class. Okay, so now I kept this deep for debug. Now I'm debugging this. Let me cancel this ignore this test first. Now I'm debugging this. Now what we can do, we can step into, which will take us to.
1 minute. I mean, oh,
Yeah.
no, no. We see when we are debugging, we are getting this ID equal to 43, 34, some numbers, right? What are those one?
Yes, they are actually the address locations as to which ID, by the way, user at
Uh,
is that what you're speaking about?
no, yeah, print stream in brackets ID equal to 43. In the
Okay, okay. This one.
yes.
Most possibly there may be a parameter named ID in this somewhere, or it
Uh-huh.
is just an address location as to where it is. See, these are names that we can understand, right? So, say whatever the object names that we give, they are all the names that we
Uh-huh.
can understand, but they have to be stored in
Okay.
some other address location. Okay,
Mhm.
so
I
those,
mean, for us, it is of no use, right?
yeah,
These
for us it's
values.
not. For us, these values are of not such an importance. Except for
Okay.
us to say, for example, there are two objects which have two same IDs, then we may think that there may be duplicates or same objects or something like that. Okay, so we don't have to worry about this ID equals to 43.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, now that println method we came into that, and now
Mm-hmm.
it is trying to call X. Okay, so we already have finished executing this hash code method, it seems. So when I said step into, hash code method got executed by default and it simply finished.
We can use that drop, right? Whatever you said in the beginning.
Yeah. Okay, drop to frame is not available. Sometimes it won't be available. Reason I also not completely understood. So I'll try to explore why it is not, and I'll try to come back. Uh,
Okay.
Step over. Okay, it just use a collections class, and let me press Control. Okay, let's first look at a simple hash code method that is actually a new string dot hash code. Now let's control open declaration. Now this string class has its own hash code implementation. Okay, and our user class does not have any hash code implementation. So when we say open implementation, it is going to the same default one. Maybe the source code for that is not available, but if you see the string class has its own way of implementing these things. Okay, it is taking each character and it is converting each character and multiplying it with some number and just giving that integer. That's it. Okay, some way it is converting all the characters into the what do you call one single integer and then returning that. This is how the behavior is defined for the string. But for any objects for which hash code is not defined, what happens is it simply calls the hash code of individual objects inside those individual parameters inside those objects. Say we just saw the hash code for this string, right? The same way there will be some hash code for the points also. Same way it will be having a hash code for this df also. So it will add all those hash codes and it will give us one address. And now if you remember seeing toString method of object of our class, when we said user object class, if I press Ctrl O, it gives me a list of methods in that particular class, and then I can type that method name and it will directly list, and then when I press enter it will allow me to go there. So now when I said toString, what it is doing, it is actually using a method called integer to hex string. So it is converting it to a hash code, that object class, and then it is actually taking me to converting it onto hexa string, and then it is being displayed. Okay, so the default implementation of hash code, though I have not shown you here, uh, how it works is it converts each individual parameter field class variable that is defined in that class and gets the individual hash codes and adds them all together. That is how the default hash code works. And because it is telling integer to hex string, so it will be converted into a hexadecimal string. So I'm guessing you are aware of what is hexadecimals, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how this particular thing is working. So whatever we see over here, when we don't have any specific toString method or hash code method, the Java by default has its own implementation in the object class, which is being defined in the JDK itself. You understood, Srinivas or Kishore? I don't remember who asked the question.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, default hash code is called, I mean, even if you are not seeing on the screen.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
I mean, that default hash code is different for each thing. I mean, each object, right? For
Yes,
string, it is a different hash code.
yes.
And
Yes, that's
okay.
true. That's true. So yes, every class will have a different hash code mechanism. Every type of object will have a different
When we
hash code mechanism.
add, if the value is equal, then it is considered as equal.
If that hash code values are equal
Okay,
by
hash
default,
code.
by default their hash codes will be compared, and if the hash
Mhm.
codes are coming up as same,
Mhm.
then they will be considered as a equal objects. Okay, or and each class may give a different implementation. If there is a string class, and if we go to control O equals, you can see this is comparing those two objects address, and then if it's an object of string, what it is doing, it is converting into character array, and then it is comparing each character of it. So the string class has given its own equals, so if we use equals, it will be comparing character by character. So if those two are same, when compared with character by character, whenever they are not equal, it is simply returning false. Otherwise, in the end, if both of them are equal till the end, it is simply returning true. So this way, actually equals class for this equals method for the string class is actually doing a different way of implementation. If though no other implementation is given, or let us see what is there in the equals method of this. Control O equals, and if you see, it is simply testing if the addresses of those two objects are equal. It is not even calculating any hash code or anything. It is simply testing if those two addresses, those two objects are stored in the same location. So that is the default behavior. That answers your question, right? You sure?
Yeah, yeah. With the-
Okay, any other
Okay.
questions?
So, but since these are not primitive types, so the equals is needed, right? Otherwise, if they are primitive types, then this equals is not needed.
For the primitive type, there is no concept of equals, right? Say for
Correct, correct.
example, if you create a variable called
Mhm.
double d 1 and d2, you don't even have d1 dot. If you type dot, there is no equals method at all. For the primitive types, there are no methods that can be created, only for the wrapped objects. But if you say, I told you wrap, there are wrapped versions, boxed versions of these primitive types, right? So there is double d3. Now d3 dot, there is equals method. Okay,
So the
so
implementation of equals for this D3 will be different.
yes, D3 is of a different, it's a class, it's a object. Whereas the D1 and D2 are the just variables of primitive type, where the value will be directly stored in those variables. So now if it is objects of what it is doing, it is converting all those doubles to bits and then comparing those bits. So for any object that is created out of a class, in fact an object can only be created out of class, so any class can have a equals operator. Okay, so the same way even the boxed versions of these primitive data types can have, but the primitive data types themselves, they don't have any equals or hash code method, because Java already knows how to compare them or how to test them. They are single values. That answers your question, right, Srinivas?
Yes, that answers.
Okay, any other questions?
So let's suppose if an object is having, we just took one name, right, one
Okay.
string, and you included Buddha in that.
Mhm.
Let's suppose an object is having multiple data types.
Our
So
class
the
already has multiple data types, say points.
okay,
Okay, so our user has points. So your question is how to consider both of them?
yes. So my question is, without considering points, how it is?
Mm, no, complete your question. I haven't completely got what you're trying
No, no. What I'm saying is, we are trying to equate two objects, right? So
to. Right.
object contains the name and points also.
Yes.
So currently we overridden the uh, equals method for the uh,
Or by using
Buddha,
only
right?
name parameter.
Name parameter, correct.
Okay.
So if we need to include points also, then we have to write extra code to handle that.
Uh, we have to change the whatever code we have already written. Here we have in our equals and hash code, we have written in such a way that only so name is considered, right? Okay, so we can
Right.
actually consider that other one also. The simplest way to do it is uh, let's say let's put these things hidden. Let's comment this house first, and then right click and go to source, generate hash code and equals methods, and in here it is asking us which are parameters to be considered when we are actually generating the hash codes and equals. Okay, so now the different the double the format df is just a formatter. We don't really have to have any consideration for that. Okay, so only name and points are important data for us in this class. So now if we say okay, now if you see the hash code method, it has actually done it differently. Okay, so for a double variable which is points, it has actually used a slightly different mechanism, and then for in the equals also we have got else if name is not equals to this, it return false. We want ignore case, and then uh, let's say let's not consider space as an ignoring character, so let's leave it here. And also it is testing if those two are equal, and if they are not equal it is returning false. So if nothing else fails, we are simply returning the true. Okay, so this is how we can also include multiple parameters. Just include that in the hash code method. So here the for the string it did not change here, right? And also we have to put two lowercase here. Okay, for string it did not change, and for the double it has changed. And then what it did, it has actually added whatever hash code that is generated already, multiplied it with some prime number, and then added the hash code that is generated for this temp, the double value. Okay, so that's about how it is being done. So not a big thing, but we just have to, we can actually add any logic, we can give any logic. This is the default logic that Eclipse is giving, so that we can do some things quickly. If you say if you want to have a different way of comparison, you can do that also. Okay, so here long temp equals to this, the two long bits, or say for example we can even say temp, because we is a double value, because it is a primitive data type, we cannot directly get the hash code of this points. So what we can actually, what we could have done is we can actually we could have actually created a double class object. That way we could have directly got this temp dot, I'm sorry, not temp, the points dot hash code, and we wouldn't have needed these two. And this, so now if you see, because if we had used the double the class object class type instead of the primitive data type, we have just called the hash code method of the on the points, and then added it to the whatever hash code we generated so far. See, all this multiplying with prime numbers and all, don't think too much about it. They are just trying to randomize whatever values they are getting, that's it. By if we this if we simply add the numbers, what happens is that number looks too similar to the number they already have. So instead of that, what they are doing is they are multiplying it with some prime number to make this number large, and then adding this hash code also. So you will see the prime numbers as used a lot of times in Java source code and all, if you go and see. But don't think too much that why they have used 31 is 31 is the only one that you have to use. No, we can use anything. We can use 37 also. We can even use non-prime numbers also. Okay, but generally in the programming they use prime numbers more, because they generate numbers that look like random numbers instead of the some simple number. Let's imagine we have selected 10 here. So what happens is most of the times we ending up having a zero at the end of that hash code, which we don't want. So now what they do is if they select multiply it with 31 or something, so let's say the problem is with using 37 is this, say 7 is there, right? So when there is a 7, if we multiply it with 1, we'll have 7. Multiply it with 2, we have 4. Multiply it with say 3, we have 1. And then 5, we have 5. And that way, but But what may happen is at some point of time we may not get a specific digit in the end when we are multiplying with 7 in the ones place. So we can imagine that. Okay, I don't know if that is the case or not. So let's say there is 1 here. So if we multiply it with certain digit, we always end up having every digit that is there. Whereas with 7, it is not the case. We won't be getting all the digits when we are multiplying with 7. So let's say there is 2. We'll never get, when we multiply a number with 2, we will never get anything that is ending with 1 or 3 or 5 or 7 or 9, right? We'll only get even numbers if we have multiplied with something with 2. So that's why they generally use prime numbers so that the numbers look more randomized instead of simply getting some numbers that look like that can be predicted by manual guessing. Okay, so that is how we can include multiple parameters also. We simply compare each parameter and verify if they are same or not. And here, because we have converted into a this double class, we could have simply said points dot equals other dot get points. Now this will simply be comparing those two objects by using the equals method that is already defined in the double class. Okay, because earlier we have used the double, which is of primitive data type, which doesn't have any equals method or anything. It has used some long mechanism of converting it into long bits and then comparing them, etc., etc., which is not really required. So that's how we can include both of them in the equality operations. Any questions? Any more questions?
No, but the one question, not regarding this
Okay.
hash code, but see, when I tried doing this array list and linked list and all, hash maps, dictionary and all,
Mm-hmm.
there are many methods which are being used.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so my question is like, yeah, when we are doing something with the help of internet and all, we can see
Mm-hmm.
different methods and we can play with that.
Mm-hmm.
But in the maybe interview point of view or even the certification point of view,
Mm-hmm.
how depth they will go into these all things.
See, if you understood, if you look at them, there will be a pattern. Okay, all the classes, the most of the method names, because you are seeing for the first time, they may look kind of strange to you, but once you look at a specific method in a certain interface, all the classes that were implementing that interface will have the same methods. Okay, so no, they don't ask every method and all. There are some very famous ones like this: equals, hash codes, add, put, delete, etc. But I suggest you, if you look at them once and their name and the documentation, the things will be pretty much clear to you. Say for example, list dot add all. Now I have not explained about this add all. What exactly is this telling? It is taking a collection of type user, which is extending of user type. Okay, so if we give, say for example, list add all of list, what happens here? It is add all is taking a collection and it is actually adding all the list elements from this and adding this. So when you try to, when you see a new method, all you have to do is just see that method description once, and that will make things clear. So they won't ask all, but there are some popular things that you may have to go through. So just when you type a dot, try to see what methods are there. That is very important. We cannot cover all the methods because there are so many classes and thousands of lakhs of classes and methods. So just see, based on, when you look at this two array, though I have not told you this so far, this is one a popular thing that they generally ask: is empty. You can guess what this is empty is. It tests if that list is empty or not. it converts that list to an array. So this way many things will be clear. So now clear method will remove all the elements that are already there. Clone method, what does clone method do? Clone method looks like it is going to copy the objects. Okay. So they won't ask all, but if you look at some methods that are there on one specific object, most of them will be there on other things also. So look at one or two. You don't have to understand every object, but knowing how to get these things, yeah, you will have to do that on your own, and they will not ask all, but there are some popular things that they may ask. Okay, so whenever, most of the times, once you see the method names and description, you will be able to remember them because the method names will be so clear that the name of the method itself will tell what exactly that is doing. Okay, so not that tough to remember. Even in the certification also, they won't ask all the methods, or they won't ask every method. They won't test your memory, that's for sure. And also in the interviews, if that interviewer is a good one, they won't test your memory. But there will be some people who give more importance to people remembering the syntaxes and people remembering the method names and class names, etc. So we can't do anything in that cases, but most of the times they don't give that much importance to the memory, because when you
Okay.
type dot, you will be getting that, and you will be getting all the intelligence and all. So just know the popular ones, that once I tell you, or just go to the list of the methods that are available over there. If anything sounds looks interesting to you, just look at what it is. That should be sufficient.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. So as I was telling, there are thousands of classes and methods. And now if you see, there are so many packages that are there by default in the Java code. Okay, so even if you try to learn all the methods, you cannot do that even in 10 years. So that's why we generally don't go over all the things. Now if you see, there is java.io package. In that there are so many. So far I was telling java.lang package, lang page, right? And it has so many classes. Okay, and if you go to some class, say for example object, which is the base for everything, it has this many number of methods. Okay, if we go to some other class, say for example runtime class, it has so many methods. So you can never remember all those things if you try to. Okay, just try to guess the descriptions based on the method names. That way it will be, things will be much clear for you. Even I don't remember all the things. Okay, only when there is a new Java version, what I'll do, I'll try to type dot and see if there is any new method available. So if anything that is looking like new method, I'll see what that method description is. That's it. I won't even bother to remember it. Okay, so shall we go ahead
Okay.
for the next topic?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, before I go to this, let me finish the singleton, then I'll go to this. So now, so far, if you see, we are creating multiple objects of a class. Okay. Let's imagine uh, we have a requirement wherein we don't want to create, we want we want to restrict others from creating multiple objects of our class. Okay, how can we do that? We use a pattern called a singleton pattern. Okay, these are all called as design patterns. Okay, to solve a specific problem, there is a specific solution. Okay, so some very common problems that are faced by users, and their solutions are actually called as design patterns. So when someone asks you which pattern you are using, it simply means what kind of approach are you going to solve a specific set of problem. Okay, and also those approaches have a specific names. So these design patterns have specific names. One such pattern is singleton. So singleton pattern means singleton approach, whatever you may call, actually solves a specific problem. The problem is, it only if say for example there is a words db class. Okay, so far I don't remember if I have introduced to our program using the words db class. Did I introduce you any class called words db?
Yeah, yes, with the words DB.
Yes, in Scramble.
Yeah, so words db has its own list of words, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine this words db. So this words DB, what is the purpose of this words DB? To have a to have a list of words to store and then go ahead and use those things, and and just a second, I'm just losing track of what sessions I've already covered. Have I covered files?
No.
No, right? And I haven't covered. Uh, I covered lists, so which means I might have covered using array list and added them manually, right? Okay. Now let me come back. So the words DB class, the intention of the words DB class is actually to store the list of words that are available for user to choose from. Okay. Now imagine our collections test. We are creating words DB db1 equals to new words DB. Okay. This collections project doesn't have words DB class, so I'll be getting an error here, but you will get the point. Words DB db2 equals to new words DB. Now, tell me, is there any difference? Okay, is there any advantage we get out of creating two different objects of words DB? Okay, actually no, because each words DB will contain same list of words. Okay, we don't have any way of controlling what words these each words DB should contain, right? So in that case, having any number of uh, implementations, or sorry, any number of objects will not make any difference. But you cannot control other developers, right? You may remember that, okay, I don't have to create the words DB again. I simply have to reuse that whatever I already have. But how do you prevent others from doing that mistake? How can you prevent others so that they will not be able to create multiple objects of the same words DB? So they can create a words DB here, and let's import it for whatever reason, and then they may create another words DB here, and import. Now let's imagine he has created two different words DBs here. Now the problem with this way of creating multiple objects is they are not actually getting more benefit out of creating multiple objects. So in that case, what we want to do is we don't want users to create any number of objects that they want. In fact, that wastes memory. It creates another list of strings that has to be created, and also it's loss of memory actually. It's wastage of memory. So in that case, to solve the problem statement is we should not allow users to create multiple instances of the same object. Instead, we have to let them use what is already created. Wherever they may have created it, they should be they should be able to use that same object. Okay, but this fiery fingers class doesn't know that a db object is created already in this main class, unless main class gives that information to this fiery fingers somehow. Okay, so you may think, okay, we can create one parameter wherein we pass the db, but there is actually a better way of solving this problem. Okay, which is nothing but using a design pattern called as singleton. So the singleton design pattern works something like this.
1 minute, Buddha. I mean, when we are creating different objects,
Mhm.
we are creating the storage for only the fields and methods, right?
Yes.
But not the actual values, whatever we gave in that words DB.
No, even they have to be they will also use some memory. Otherwise, they cannot be remembered.
Okay, okay, okay. Got you, Buddha.
Okay, so what happens when we create multiple DBs? All those words will be also be stored again in the memory. Okay, so which is like a huge way. So here we so far we might have seen 4 words or 5 words, but if we have, say for example, 1,000 words, there ends the matter. So you cannot really have that many number of uh, objects for if there are those objects. So it consumes huge amount of memory. So to solve that kind of problem, what we do is we actually use this singleton pattern. Singleton patterns works like this. Okay, here what we actually do is, so far you have seen the constructors as public. Okay, so that we have, whenever we call new that constructor name, and then that constructor is being called. Now in the singleton pattern, what we will do is we will make that particular constructor private, so no one else can create an object for a specific method. Okay, and then what we do is we create a getter method that checks if an object is already created or not, and then if it is not created, it will be created, and then otherwise it will simply be creating the returning the object that is already created. So whatever class we want to make a singleton, what we will do is we will make that class constructor as private constructor, and then we create another method called, typically the convention is to use a method name called as get instance. So that get instance method should check if the object is already created for that for itself, and if it does, it has to return that, otherwise it has to create a new object. Okay, so now let's see here. If you have three different objects, user Rajiv, Raghav, Niveda, and user u4 u3, what really happens in the memory is there will be 4 variables and 3 different objects. Here what we did, there is Rajiv object, Raghav object, Niveda object, and then u1 variable, u2 variable, u3 variable, they are all pointing to Rajiv, Raghav, and Niveda, and u4 is also pointing to Niveda. Imagine we write some code like this user manager, where m1 equals to user manager dot get instance. So instead of to create a user manager object, instead of using new user manager, we are using a method called get instance that actually is created inside the user manager itself, that will take care of how many objects are created for a specific class, and then that should be returned. Okay, so here in this case what happens is, even though we are creating user m1 and m2 managers, as we are using this get instance method, which will take care of making sure there is only one object, there will be only one object and both will be referring to the same manager object. Okay, and there are two other variables u1 and u2, Rajiv and Raghav, are objects which are being pointed to by this. So here the user class is not actually a user class is not actually a singleton here, because there are multiple objects getting created for the user class. And then whereas the manager class, even though we are calling them get instance, there is only a single object that is there for. So this is the singleton. So here user manager class is a singleton class. Okay, so now let's look at our, in terms of code, how we can achieve that. So in the data, virchdb has a array. Okay, and also as I said, we could have actually created this as a list. In fact, I remember, I think I gave you that particular assignment to actually convert this into a dictionary or some other data type that you may want, or map, to actually now without using arrays, so that the list number of words are not limited to 4. Okay, but anyways, that's not the topic that I'm trying to cover here. Now here, because this constructor is private, what happens is the words db can be, anyone can create the words db class. Others. Okay, we can create that in the main, we can create that in the custom scrambler, we can create that in the game, everywhere. So what happens is the same object will be created multiple number of times. Now if we, let's say we want to assume, we want to restrict others from actually creating multiple objects of the same class. Okay, so in that case what we can do is this. First things first, there is one constructor that is not accepting any parameters. Now, first thing, what did I tell? We have to make this private. The constructor has to be private so that others cannot simply use new and wordsdb to create objects. I made both of these as private because both anyone can be used. Okay, so now this actually gives us an error here. We can no longer create an wordsdb object like using this new keyword. Okay, and we cannot call the constructor because we cannot call the constructor. So now what we to remedy this situation, what we do is this. We create a public method which is static and it returns the same wordsdb type of object, and we can give any name. The convention is to use getInstance method. Now here we can actually take boolean and tough. Okay, for now let's first simply solve the simplest problem. Let's simply think about how to call this wordsdb. Now here what we can actually do is, in fact we have to remember, we have to create a static variable which is private static, and which is of type wordsdb, and let's name it instance. This is the convention, and let's put it null. Now the static objects will exist even when we don't create any objects of the class. So that's you already know, which I have explained. Okay, so what we can actually do is we can check if the instance is null, and also there will be only one single variable wordsdb instance for any number of objects. Okay, so if one class, if in one object the static variable value is x, in another object of the same type also the static value will be x only. So if this is null, then what we are going to do is we are going to put instance equals to new wordsdb. Because this is private, we can call this inside this same class, and then once we created it, what we can simply do is return instance. So now what is happening over here, let's see. When this class has been read into the memory, whenever there is which is static, it will be creating this variable. Okay, and that for that it will be just simply pointing null, so for the first time only. Okay, and then when we actually how do we call this? Instead of new words, or we can simply call it as words db dot get instance. Now what happened over here? Instead of calling new and wordsdb, we have actually called wordsdb dot get instance. Now wordsdb, when we call this method, it checks if that instance is equals to null. If that instance is equals to null already, if it is null, what we are going to do is we are simply creating a new wordsdb class. So that class is creating an object of itself, and it is storing it inside a private variable called as instance. Okay, that's all we are doing if it is null, which means let's say we have called wordsdb here also. Now let's assume this is the first time that it gets called. Okay, now when we get this, okay, is it the first time? No, when we are actually creating a game object, then itself it's getting called. So now this will be the second time that it gets called. So now what happens when we call this get instance method for the second time? It again comes to this line number 15 and checks if the instance is equals to null. But because we have already created that instance variable and pointed that variable object of wordsdb and pointed that instance, this will become false. So what happens is a new instance will not be created. Instead, that existing instance will be returned. Okay, so this way what happened over here is by using this mechanism, however many number of times user may call this get instance method, only one single object will be created in the memory. Okay, so you guys understood the concept of singleton, how it works?
Yes, yes.
Yes, Buddha. But if you do like this, I
Hmm.
can change the values of when I call it for the second time.
Okay,
right? I mean, when I call it for the first time, the new DB is having say some value XYZ, and when I am calling for the second time, I will change that value.
Now, which value are you speaking about? Let's be precise.
Votes DB.
Now, what do you mean value? What is the value in words DB? What do you mean a value in words DB?
Like before this one, when I create two objects, it will be two separate memory.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And whatever the operations I do at the first memory storage location,
Okay.
it is not dependent on the storage too.
Yes, that's true.
But in this case, I am referring to the same storage.
Yes.
So whatever I do operations for the first time,
Right. They will be applicable on whatever many number of variables that are referring to that same object.
okay, okay.
Okay. See, if your requirement is to have two different states, then you don't create singleton at all.
Oh yeah, yeah, got you, Buddha, yeah.
Okay. So it's purely to solve one specific problem where in this specific case we don't want two different states at all. Okay, the words list of words are same. We don't care about how many number of times it may be used. The list of words are always same. So only in this case the single. That's why we have created a singleton for words DB, but not for the game. Okay, so each game will have a different state. Okay, each game will have a different stopwatch, timer, and everything. So that's why not all classes will be singletons, but some classes where there is no need to create multiple, then we will implement the singleton interface. Okay, so that is a singletons work. So now let's say we have. Okay, shall I cover the next topic or no? How many? I think time may not be sufficient. Okay, let's stop over here. Uh, let's stop over here. I'll discuss the later topics tomorrow. Otherwise, time won't be sufficient. Do you guys have any questions on whatever we covered so far? We in fact covered
No, Buddha.
singleton alone. The new topic is singleton, hash code, and equals. Also, we covered. So it's up to if you have any questions, try to do. Otherwise, I'm not giving any new exercises. I'm actually going to ask you to finish whatever that I've already given. So, in fact, they already covered that. So, try to create that words DB as singleton in your own code so that you will see and try to do your own experimentations of those objects when they are singleton and all. Okay. So, any other questions, guys, apart from this? Okay. Fine then. I'll upload this video and this PDF that has been already that I have been showing. So just refer to those. If you get any questions, just ping me in the WhatsApp group. And also, I will not be taking the this weekend session. I'll be going out. So we have one session tomorrow morning and another session on Friday morning. The next session I'll be able to take will be on Tuesday only because I'll be coming back on Monday once I go. So after these two sessions, there'll be break until next Tuesday. After Friday, I'll be meeting you on Tuesday. So if you have any doubts or anything, you can ping me in WhatsApp. I'll respond over there. If you don't have any questions, that's well and good. So I'll give you some exercises to do in the time of that Saturday and Sunday and Monday.
So, Buddha, today your is 28th, right? So your 29th and 30th, we will be having classes.
We have classes 28th and 30th. Yeah, that's the regular schedule, right? We
Uh,
have we have on Wednesday mornings, we have on Friday mornings, and then we have on
Yeah, now it's your Wednesday morning, right? Now it's your Wednesday morning.
yeah, it's my Wednesday morning. Okay, I'm sorry. I think that's the confusion. So we have so for you it is 27 still.
yes, yes,
Yes,
27.
correct.
Okay, okay. So in that case, Okay, today is Wednesday. Okay, okay, fine. In that case, you will only have a session on your Thursday night.
Okay.
Okay, so I think
Okay.
that's the I confused you guys. So only the next only one session is there. That is your Thursday night, which we will be. After that, I'll again meet you on your Monday night.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So time zone, the devil. Fine then. See you. See you day after tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine
Yeah.
with that.
Bye.